Welcome back to another TerranScapes video. And I do mean that. I want to welcome you all. And some of you are going, oh my God, what the hell does it look like? I've had such a problem editing this video because I added a webcam and the webcam was recording in a different format, and it took me a couple hours to realize that. We're not going to get into it. I was like, I don't have time to go shave, and and I was like, fine, we're just gonna, you're just gonna get a little more natural me. I was glad to see that the last video was received pretty well from the comments that I saw on it. So this is actually going to be another video in that style, but in this case, I am doing experiments on Verdigris. I'm writing the third part of a three-part monthly column for Patreon that is about how to achieve good verdigris effects. And so this is where I have begun to experiment because there aren't really nobody, including me, has been doing verdigris correctly. This is my personal opinion. So I am going through the process of teaching myself how to do verdigris. So some of the references in the video are going to talk about some of those first two monthly columns. This was originally going to be for patrons only. It was going to be actually an adjunct to the monthly columns, but I decided that I would release it because I have a feeling a lot of people would like to learn a little bit more about verdigris. There's, more in the first two monthly columns that are relevant to this, but I'm going to stick in a couple pictures just to give you an idea. So I will annotate and try to fill in some blanks as I go along. Before I get too far, I wanted to mention that I have put up a survey. I'll have the link in the description. Oh, by the way, I fixed the timestamps in the other video. But I have a survey that I've put up that is about the channel. It asks a little bit about the content that you'd like to see. It asks about what your interest might be in Twitch or live streaming. And it asks you a little bit about Patreon. And one of the questions is about whether you've read any of the monthly columns. So if you're interested, and I hope you are, you can follow the link in the description to the survey. It's got, 8 questions, 10 questions. Only take you a couple minutes. You don't have to answer them all. You can go answer the first 3 and bail. And I'm going to keep in the cocktail of the evening for this video. The cocktail of the evening is Wassail with port wine added to it. Wassail is like a mulled cider kind of beverage, lots and lots of spices. My wife got inspired to make some, so it was like a big pot of wassail sitting on the stove, and I was going through the book. I was like, I don't know, what should I make for a cocktail? And she was like, well, why don't you have wassail? It's supposed to have, it can have brandy in it or sherry, and we have some port wine in the cabinet, and so put some of that in it, and it's pretty tasty. It's a hot beverage, so it's kind of like a comforting, warm winter beverage. I can't tell you much about what's in Wassail because I didn't make it. So, do your Google foo best and find some recipes for it. And then you can kick it with a little brandy or, like I said, some sherry or some port wine. And I have to say, I'm not a port wine fan, but it works very well in here. So with that being said, let's jump over to the bench and you can see the beginning of my work getting ready to learn verdigris. So I wasn't planning on shooting a video on the verdigris part 3 column, but I thought I wanted to try out the new camera angle, a little practice. And I actually, in the column, you'll see the photo of all the verdigris products that I have. And so I'm gonna give it a go and see what I can come up with. So quick introduction here. This is a series of miniatures I purchased thinking they'd be good statues. Right? Those are good statue models. And I used them during the Orc project to test out various washes that I was trying to create. This is my platform for testing. I really, really like this when I put it together, so I can try out a variety of things all on a similar, background, similar style, format, miniature texture. And so I'm going to use this again for the verdigris, but I want to prime them. And rather than get out the airbrush this time, I'm going to prime them by brush. So I don't think I might have done a little brush work with the Stynylrez. This is a fantastic primer. If you missed me talking about it in the past, really, really like this. I don't think I'll lose a lot of texture, but it's really not important for this application necessarily, so I think it's going to be just fine. And can I just say, it is refreshing to be back at the table actually doing some real work. It has been a long time, too long, and that is not good for me. It's not good for TerranScapes, and it's not good for my patrons or my YouTubers. So we're getting all back to stuff now. I've done a lot of pre-work on my Patreon page. I got a lot of caught upness. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. I did a lot of catch up on that. All right, so I don't know. I hadn't thought that far ahead to think about whether I will be shooting, you know, this entire thing, sort of like an at the bench. I don't expect to, because it might take me quite a while, but I'll be shooting stills along the way, and maybe I'll turn on the camera from time to time, and that way I can also maybe take a quick peek and see what the footage looks like and how much I'm in frame, because I can't check if I'm in frame very easily. Well, I can actually, because I can see the computer from here, but I don't think I want to try to shoot 6 hours of this and then try to edit it down to like 15 minutes, a half an hour, or maybe leave it as a, I don't know. Anyway, that's enough gabbing. So I did take a look. I will talk a little bit here while I prime these models. I did re-examine my own Patreon post and take a look at, okay, this has got to go faster than this. And take, boy, it's rusty picking up a paintbrush too. I took a look at my post and took a look at all the different, you know, types of verdigris on statues and the like that I had collected photos of, and I found it useful to go back and look at it again, because, you know, I took away impressions about reds and browns and, you know, where areas should occur and all of that, but you know, going back and taking a look, I don't think I have to reprime this whole thing, really helped me to get a refined memory, if you will, about how these models should, you know, what colors to pull from my paint rack and try out. And I have a bunch of weathering pigments for verdigris from, you know, Model Mates, which is still available. If you go out and you do a little shopping in Europe, you can find some in the United States, but because they're out of production, it's like each store has like an old stock, and you kind of gotta maybe shop around for each color. Anyway, so my goal here is to A, try out a bunch of those products, but B, try maybe a couple that I like in a couple different ways, because as the photos reveal, you know, there can be some very different baseline colors for verdigris, probably depending on things like the copper content in the bronze, or whether it's just pure copper, and that sort of idea. So I'd like to try a different couple color schemes, and I'd like to try a couple different levels of verdigris, you know, say just starting, and maybe a really old statue, or you know, something like that, or you know, a relic that was dug up that could be used on, say, anything, shields or whatever. So I think that's one of the nice things about having all these guys racked up, is I can do that relatively easily. And in fact, when I was doing my tests for washes, I also could do the front and the back, or split them in half. You know, I don't have to do the whole model to see what the effect looks like. So I have a really large palette of miniatures here to work with, and it gives me a great chance to experiment and see what you know, what I can come up with. So, and looking at the photos on the column, you know, there were some pieces that were definitely, you know, like even with different colors of verdigris on some of the sections. So, you know, something maybe, I don't know, exposed to maybe more moisture or something like that, and it had taken on a very blue color. And then on some, the, you know, and on the other side, I mean, it had a very strong green tone. So, you know, it's in some ways, this is a little daunting because there's so many, in my mind, of course, the way I want to look at it, there's so many subtleties that I think bring in the realism of the effect. And at the same time, there are so many options on how to pursue it that it's like, yeesh, you know, what do I pick first? So we will see what I come up with. As part of this experiment, it's to help guide you guys, and it's also to really refine my skills. As I mentioned in the columns, I don't have a very good handle on verdigris, and it feels to me like such an important weathering technique. It's to me, it's just as important as rust, especially when you're doing older time periods or whatnot, and you want statues or you want machines that have been, battle aged and, are 1,000 years old, like some of the 40K pieces. There's a couple that are in the part 2 of the column where I show some of the model work that people have done. So anyway, but I also had to lock the focus for the webcam because it does not focus very well either. And it's got a weird focus system. So it jumps in steps. There's no fine gradation. It's like maybe there's like 20 steps of focus from, infinite to macro. And so that is a little awkward because it's, I don't know. If it's trying to autofocus, it really jumps out because it's only having to go, it tries to go one step, and that can be quite out of focus. So I tried to set it up to have that's funny, I didn't take that flash off. I tried to set it up to have a reasonable focus, like zone that I think will be in focus most of the time. Oh, by the way, though, the Stynylrez, I would make sure that you clean your brush regularly. If you haven't read my cleaning your brush column, go back and read that. But I would make sure that you clean your brush regularly because it's a little bit more aggressive than normal paints because it's got stronger acrylic content. All right, so let's start putting some colors on these guys. So here's a shocker. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not putting any bronze down. At least, unless I'm going to pick a spot where I'll probably do some. But for most of the verdigris pictures, there's no exposed bronze unless it's somebody, somebody's wiped it down. And so, starting with a bronze color really is the wrong way to go. So I'm going to use this. This is Burnt Umber from Model Air. This is a really nice color. It's a very brown red, and I think it's going to make a fine base that I can build on for a lot of the effects. So that's where I'm going to start. Using the Model Air paints, I should add, is they're quite thin, of course, because they're airbrush paints, but that means you really get preservation of the textures of the model, the details, and you get great flow off the brush, so you don't have to worry about, say, filling in the eyes with a puddle or whatever. That's something I never do. You can pick it out, but it's I don't know. I really love them. And you can see, because they're a little thinner, they almost automatically sort of reveal highlights. They shade that, and that's nice. It can make some of the other aspects of painting the model a little bit easier if you try to work with that. So, I don't know. I like working with them. I like working with them a lot. And I have a friend who has done a lot of miniature painting, and he was extolling their virtues as well. It's not just me. But if you're looking for solid base coverage, quickly and easily, don't use them. That's not what you're going to get out of them. And I guess, you know, like I said, in theory, I don't need to paint the whole model. I'm just looking for a certain amount that I can work with. But we'll do her skirt. Doing the arms gives me a nice flat surface to try. And then doing the skirt and her chest gives me some texture to work with. I'm not going to do her legs, though. We'll do her back so we can try something different on it. I have really come to be okay with this format. You know, when I first did it, I was a little distracted by it. You know, never having seen or had people see my work in progress. And now I'm feeling pretty free about it, which is nice. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. I'd like to do, I will do, wait, I have planned on, see, that's different than will. There's intention, and then there's outcome. But I would like to do more at the bench videos. And so that's partly why I've spent some time. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't quite come back fully to YouTube, is I'm tired of trying to problem solve things each video and then complain about what I didn't figure out. That sucks. It sucks for me. It sucks for the viewers. So I really sat down a little while, I don't know, month or two so back, and I just was like, all right, I'm sitting down with my mic. I'm I'm recording a bunch of different segments, different distances from my mouth, there's a couple settings on the camera, and figuring out what works, what doesn't, what's the optimum. And that was nice. And then I had a pretty solid foundation to go from. All right, let's do a little more here. We'll do at least 2 figures in this. Oh, I didn't prime. You know what? Let's screw it. If I base coat the whole thing, I don't need to prime the shields, right? I don't know if this is the best brush to use for this. This is one of my cheap sables, actually, and that means I'm not particularly concerned about being really particular about, you know, how I use it or being, you know, gentle on it or whatnot, because it doesn't really have the best tip. There's a stray hair on it. I haven't cleaned off yet, picked off, but it should hold a lot of paint. I'm not fully loading it, which I should be, because it's got a nice full body in the bristle head here, and so it holds a lot of paint, and it has a nice tip to be able to make sure I get into those little crevices. If I was using like a big flat brush, it might be a little more challenging. See, now that's a fully loaded brush. See how much paint I can get out of that? Seeing that? I don't know. I guess historically, I'm reluctant to fill brushes fully with paint because I'm always worried about the ferrule. But Jesus, this is a huge brush. It's got a ton of room for error. It's like anything. When you first start learning something, it's kind of overwhelming. I think that's true for a lot of things. I would always say that's true with video games, for instance. You know, at first you're just like overwhelmed. But as you, well, at least I am, but as you do it more, each step becomes secondary nature. You know, you just, second nature. And so you really can easily get past those and start working on the next step of difficulty. And so I've never done photos like this before. And so that's going to have its own learning curve. You know, it's just like, all right, now I'm ready to add this. And so, you know, where I've wanted to be in terms of presenting things has grown as I've been able to be like, okay, I got that. I don't know. We'll go a little longer. I'm actually enjoying chatting with you at the moment. So the problem, though, is it just becomes a ton of footage to look at. And, you know, even if I run it at double speed, I can't edit it at triple speed. It's just too fast. In fact, I lose the audio. It won't play the audio really when I'm doing triple speed, or at least it plays it, but I can't understand it. You know, and I really need the audio understandable so I can know where crap is happening. And I also need to be able to cut for the multiple cameras when I'm doing a multi-camera shot. And that means I can't be blasting around too much. So, you know, if I shoot 3 hours of footage like this, just to view it on the first pass takes me an hour and a half. And I always go through it multiple times. And so, you know, yowzers. And in fact, the first pass at an hour and a half isn't really true, because then I have to pause and like, okay, camera split, whoops, just, you know, 2 seconds too late, and then go back and just move that little slider real quick on the timeline. It's like, oh boy. All right, so what's the second color I'm going to try out? This is Hull Red. I love this color. I love this color. It's more red than the burnt umber. Oh, that was burnt umber. Yeah. This is, I think, going to match very well to some of the things I was seeing at some. Oh, Jesus! Tip replacement complete. One thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is that I haven't used these paints in a little while, and they can really settle and be hard to remix in. And I usually use, if you're a longtime patron, you probably remember me demonstrating as a mini vid. It's one of the earliest. A paint shaker. Use a jigsaw. You make paint holders with pill bottles, and then you just fire up the jigsaw, and it shakes the living hell out of them. And then you get mixed paint. It's wonderful, and I feel like I should be doing that because it's been a while. But sometimes it depends on the colors. Some of the colors I use more often, and so I feel more confident that they are mixed well. And of course, if I can see medium floating in the bottle, and you know, then I'll know if it's mixing properly. But anyway, I didn't want to get the paint shaker out today because, oh, this is better. Oh, look at that. Isn't this a wonderful color? The other thing about the webcam is its color balance is a little wacky, so I'm going to have to fiddle with that in post. But I'm getting better at color balancing visually. It's not the best way to do it. I should be using a gray card. Actually, I should be using my color checker. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get my color checker. Oh, the color checker. I'll show you guys. So this is my color checker passport, and it has a couple different things you can use. And I'm going to have to change the battery on it. All right. But the way you use it, this is actually for photographs. This is an X-Light color checker. This is actually for photographs, but I can use it with the video. Oh, let's do it this way. So you take a shot of this with all the cameras. And there's a spectroscope in Premiere, so you can look at neutral gray and make sure that that's got a center point that's perfect. And then you come up and you highlight, you mask out everything except these colors. And then each of these colors represents a ray on the vector scope, I think it is. So then you can see how far they are out of alignment from the true color it's supposed to be. And then you can adjust that a little bit, and then you get almost perfect color. It's really nice. And so anyway, it's got the, black, white, neutral gray on that side. And I think, no, it does. You know what? So like I said, I paid over $100 for this. This is expensive. First thing Tanya wanted to do when she saw it, she was like, oh, I saw her going in to touch. I was like, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. I hate this hinge. This hinge always feels like it's going to break. I hate that hinge, you know? Like, anyway, just to show you, I don't use these sides. I think this would be for a focus test. And then another blank color probably for determining true white. Well, I don't know. I only use the one with the color segments. They have one for video now, and if you use DaVinci Resolve, you take a shot of it, and DaVinci Resolve just automatically looks at it and goes, oh yeah, I know where all the colors are. Oh yeah, I know where gray is. And you don't have to like mask it or do anything like that. All right, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop here, and I am going to do a little more work, and then I will come back and you can rejoin me and see where my progress is. I hope you enjoyed that look. Like I said, this is a multi-part series, and it's not even done yet, so I've shot like quite a bit of footage after this, and I still need to do one final round. I think I'm drilling in on it. Hopefully you will stay around for those because it's just seeing this is, you know, it can't be enough. But I also want to say that this is not the only video format that TerranScapes 2.0 is going to put out. So I should have said that at the beginning. But, you know, if you're concerned about that, this is just happens to be what I'm working on at the moment. And I've had a lot of to-dos to try to get this 2.0 concept rolling. And once, you know, I get that done and I get the column done, I got to start doing work on a plan for a project, and I'm anxious to do that. So there's going to be, you know, there'll be some of the older style videos. So in case you were worried, 2 in a row, 2.0, don't be. Viewer comments. My Shizo buddy writes a question about choosing the right Rioflex, which is a molding rubber compound, for casting plaster, or gypsum plaster, or cement 3D tiles. I have a video first that you should see, and I will put a little picture of it here, and I'll put a link in the description. And it goes over how to understand all of the properties of mold making rubbers, both silicones and Rioflex. So I go through, you know, what is the durometer? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right? But what's the shore hardness? What's tensile strength? What are those things? And that affects really how you should choose the type of rubber you use, but also its hardness value, because if you have undercuts, then you don't want a very stiff rubber, for instance. And I explain a little bit of that in the video, which is hopefully still kind of right here. The very short answer is it's a relatively flat piece and it doesn't have a lot of things pointing out at weird angles. A shore hardness of 30 or 40 will do fine. Rioflex 30, Rioflex 40. But I do encourage you to take a look at that so you understand what these numbers mean, and then you can choose something that works best for you. And maybe you'd want a silicone, for instance. So check that out. Scott Wag asks about cutting styrene. He was going back to one of my earlier Imperial Sector projects. This was one I did in the snow, and I had a lot of styrene that I had added as plates on some of the walls. And he was asking me, how do I cut that? You cannot cut with an scissors unless you're using very, very, very thin styrene, like 0.010 maybe, which is like paper thin. I use a utility knife, and I use a straight edge, and I score it multiple times, and then I tend to snap it. 2 quick tips. 1, make your passes very light so that you start a channel before you apply any pressure, because at least for me, if I start to apply pressure early, I can kick out from the channel, and then getting that cut back and that line is a problem. So start your channel lightly, run your blade down it a couple times, depends on how thick you are using. In that build project, I was using 0.06, which is kind of a thicker styrene sheet. And then once you score it, you know, maybe 1/4 to 1/2, you can fold it and it will snap. The problem with snapping it is that it leaves a rough edge because you're tearing the plastic and that plastic will deform. So if you want a really clean edge, you will have to make more passes so that when you snap it, it has less that you need to break. Or of course you can cut all the way. Styrene shows every single tiny scratch that 300 grit will scratch the so, you really want to get a smooth, like 500 grit or something maybe to finish that off. I'll just use my blade and scrape it flat. And, you may not get the perfect edge, but you can sort of smooth that out a little bit. So hopefully that gives you a few hints about using styrene on your modeling projects. So that wraps it up. I have to race now to try to get this actually edited because I had many delays today, and I'm brand new to this whole Tuesday schedule thing. So it may not go up first thing Tuesday. I'd like it though. I'd like it. So I'm going to try to work on next Tuesdays, like tomorrow. So if I run into problems, it's ready because I want it to be up when you wake up. When you wake up. And as it is, I'm going to have to wake up early if I can even work on it because of upload lengths, because this video is kind of long. So we'll see. Trying my best. Brand new format, working on it. Stick with me, I'll get it. And that's got to be it because I've already rambled on too long, but I do want to thank you for joining me, and hopefully you're finding some of this content helpful or inspiring or entertaining, and I hope you will be coming back for the next video because you know that I will be back soon, redundantly, with another TerranScapes video.